Hello friends, thank you for joining me again here today. I am taking a minute to look up just a few more images. It's amazing how much you can Google something and not find what you're looking for. Let's try coral rose bush. There we go. I Googled coral rose and was just getting huge close-ups. Okay, this will do. This will do. Download that one. Yes, download that image. And this one right here. Yeah, download that image. I'll come back to all of these later. That one's kind of nice. Knockout roses, that's what they're called, I believe. All right, I am finally ready to get started on the final edit. Now, a little funny play on terminology here. I've been calling this the final edit layer for a long time, but now I've actually developed at least two steps after the final edit layer. So I could call it post-painting or after paint, I don't know. I'll talk later about what those two additional steps are. But for now, let's just focus on what I call the final edit layer. And I also, for a long time, called it light opaque highlights, which is more perhaps a wooden description of what's happening here. But final edit really helps convey, I think, the right impression. Where to start? Three different options. There used to be four, but the fuzz layer took care of one of those. Now there's three options. The furthest away object, so in the landscape that's always a sky, that's option number one. Start with the sky. That's the most traditional way to paint. Start with the furthest away thing and move forward. That's a good option on this painting. Number two, start with the lightest, brightest, whitest thing, which in this case might be this distance back here, or maybe a bit of the, no, that's not going to be whiter than that. The sky. Number three, start at the focal point, which is, in this case, either the swing or the birdhouse. Okay, so it's decision time. I'm thinking. You want to see me thinking? There. That's me thinking. You see smoke coming out of my ears? Good. I think I'm going to start with a sort of combination, not quite the furthest away, sky, but not quite the lightest, that would also be the sky, but the sky's too small, too far up there. I don't want to start. See, if you start doing your final edits in the outer edges of your painting, you might be overdoing it and not know it. One good word about this particular painting, it is almost finished. I mean, my final edit is going to be truly significantly less than 10%. I would think 5% of this painting is going to get this final edit, but it's a critical 5%. I'm going to start here in the greenery that's very light, bright, and far away. That also gives me, I'm going to get you in here as close as I can, gives me a good excuse for talking about a very particular, what's the word, a trick, a habit, a practice that I have. I'm not sure what's the best word here. One of those things, I don't know how I slipped into it over the years, but I did, and I like it. So, in just a second, I'm mixing up paints here. Forgive me. All you can see is the top of my head, I'm sure. Trying to match that color. All right, let me draw your attention, and I think you can see this. Do you see this? Yeah, this pencil line right here. There's one there, and there's one here. Those are pencil lines. Now, this line right here was actually produced by taking a rag, sticking my finger in it, and making a mess. And in this case, I picked up some of the dark paint from the fence and just dragged it up there and made that line. So this line is kind of fuzzy. These two are pencil lines. The first question should be, what in the world are they doing there? Why do I have those? Is that supposed to be telephone wires, maybe, that fell down? No, you know, I'm being silly. No, no, no. Those lines have nothing to do with similitude, with reality. Okay? They are purely abstract points of energy. Now, I didn't take my pencil and go, I don't know if you can you see my tongue? I didn't take my pencil and go, right? And sorry, you can't see my tongue. And trust me, I'm sticking out my tongue. No, no, no. At the end of one of my last pencil stage, I just took my pencils and made a whole bunch of big slash marks going in all directions. Here's, for instance, another similar mark down here. See this big curve? So those kinds of marks are scattered, not overdone, but scattered throughout my painting. And now I'm into final edit. That means I get to decide whether I like those pencil marks or not. Now, almost always I do. That's what really, one of the things that surprises me is how often I, in fact, do like and do retain these marks. I just decided that color was a little bit too bright. Not only do I usually keep these random, abstract marks, more often than not, I do what you see me doing right now, which is in fact accentuating or exaggerating them by painting up to them on both sides. Now, you realists, I'm driving you nuts right now. Okay, now that's a little bit too much, so I'm going to come in here and smudge out some of it a little bit. It was too much energy, it was getting too much attention. There, now that's just about right. And as I was saying, you realists, I'm driving you nuts. It's like, what do you mean? What's that supposed to be? What's that supposed to be? Not supposed to be anything. It's just a mark of energy. I don't know any better way. It's an abstract stroke. Okay, now some of you have heard me say this before. I have 4 grandchildren living in the house with me these days. And if they were to say to me, Bigka, why did you do that? So I'm discovering that one answer applies to pretty much everything that I do. The answer is because I think it looks cool. Or I do it because I think it's going to look cool. Right? So why did I just paint around? One was a smudge mark and the other 2 were pencil marks. Why did I accentuate them by painting around them? The answer is because I think it looks cool. Slightly better answer would be energy. And you might say, well, are you going to do that kind of detail throughout the entire canvas? The answer is certainly not. No, 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 no. That would be way overdo it. Hang on just a second. I want to see here. Let's back out. Hey, Lori, you are very welcome. Thanks for that comment. Let's see if I can look up weeping willow branch. Weeping willow branch. See if I can get a close up. Weeping willow branches. Okay, and then I hit images. Let's see what I get here. Yeah, okay, good, perfect. That's what I want right there. And I'm gonna hit save, download image. There we go. Now I'm gonna go to my gallery. So I can open that right here and I can enlarge it. There, that is what I wanted to see, because I do want to indicate I did, and I'm glad I did that. I had forgotten to what extent the weeping willow leaves actually weep along with the branches. Not only do the branches hang down, the individual little tiny knife-shaped leaves also point downward. So good. So just want to hint at that while I'm painting these. And it sounds like a good time for some scratching. Yeah. There we go. And that's. Oh, let me back up and explain something. When I said that no more than 5% of this painting, 10% at the most, will have final edit or will have opaque paint on it, that does not include translucent like I'm doing right now. So I will cover a larger percentage of the painting with thin translucent bits of paint, okay? All right, that is just about perfect right there. Don't need to do too much more. Now I'm going to mix up some darker. Sorry, Leisha. I'm trying to keep them all happy, and I didn't know if you wanted them to have reasons or not. Sometimes I'm left helping keep the kids quiet while I broadcast, and might be violating family rules here by giving the little munchkins raisins. Grandpa pleads innocent here. Okay, so right now I'm same principle, except now the objects I'm painting around is a literal thing. It's this wrought iron fence, and again, I don't know if it's called wrought iron if the iron is not very wrought, or it's very simple wrought iron. So I'm not sure I'm using the right terminology. I'm not sure it's called a iron fence, but it's an iron fence. And here I am, I'm just cleaning up the fence a tiny little bit. It's almost perfect the way it is. But I want to come in here and paint edges, do some painting right up to the iron bar, so thereby defining it a little bit more carefully. I said this last night, let me repeat a principle again. Anytime you have an oft repeated shape, motif is my favorite word. So this fence is a classic example. What is repeated? The stays. Bump, 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 right? 25 or so of them going across. Anytime you have an oft repeated motif, you must, to put it too bluntly, you must come up with several different techniques for rendering that repetition. Okay? And I want to point out that I've now rendered this fence. Let me see if I can remember. First, I sketched it with paint. Second, I sketched it with pencil. Third, I negative painted it in acrylics. Fourth, I did pencils again. Fifth, I painted dark paint on it. That's 5. And this is the 6th distinct treatment of this fence. Okay? So, repeated motif. They are not all painted the same way. Can you absorb that? That would be a huge improvement if you're painting, if you don't know that principle. And it happens especially in architecture. Now it also happens in tree branches, by the way. if you're doing a painting of a tree that has many branches, you have to figure out several different techniques for rendering those branches if you want it to be a good painting. Now, if you just want to render branches and you don't care if it's a good painting, you just want an accurate depiction of branches, then that's a different story. If the seed company pays you to do illustrations of their trees that are going to grow out of these seeds, then ignore everything I just said, because your job as an illustrator is to accurately render the trees. So then you don't worry about so much about different motifs. But if you're trying, as I am here, trying to be a good painter, that's a different story. I'm going back up into my, as you can see here, into my willow branches a little bit. I'm going to mix up a darker green now so that I can do a little bit more of the fence over here in the dark area. Let me see what color I've got. Nope, I need a little bit bluer than that. The phthalo blue. Oh yeah, there we go. This is nice. I missed a comment earlier. I failed to check out my comments before I closed off my last broadcast. And somebody said, I saw you doing this same subject matter a couple months ago. They said, do you have the habit of doing the same subject over and over? And the answer is no, although I do think that is a good habit. No, probably you probably tuned in months ago when I was doing the watercolor sketch, because I broadcast myself doing this. So my guess is that's what you saw. And so this is, yes, in fact, the follow-up to that one. But the point that, I'm sorry, I forget the name, I should have looked before I started talking about it, that somebody makes is a really good one. It is a good idea as an artist to work in themes and to do things over, even the same painting, even the same subject over and over. Not a bad idea at all. I'm thinking I'm going to do that as far as themes. You may have heard me in the last week. I've done what I'm calling traffic paintings. And I am happy with the 2 that I've done, so I plan to do several more. Okay, I hope I haven't overdone it. Let me zero in on 2 things here that I want you to see. I'm going to move you. Sorry about the earthquake. There we go. I'm going to point out this red blush back here. I don't know where that came from. Either it came from my very first strokes on the canvas, which was big up here, red. That's probably where it came from. Or I was going to say it could be when I was painting this red birdhouse and I just painted in the zone of the birdhouse and let the color bleed. But I think it probably came from the abstract. I want you to see right here how beautiful that is. That red peeking through. That's the kind of thing I didn't say to myself, now I think there's going to be a fence here and I bet it'll look awesome if I've got a little bit of red coming through. No, none of that. You understand? No, that is not how I thought. I just threw down enough abstract colors underneath the canvas. While I'm up close, let me show you here's part of that same stroke. See the red in the top of this tree? I'm going to add a little bit of green to this, but I'm going to let a lot of the red show through, and it's going to be gorgeous. Just a variety of color. I guess that's all I have to say about that. He's speechless, ladies and gentlemen. He has talked himself into speechlessness. Don't worry, it won't last. Hey, something's happened to my music. Let me go back and see what's going on here. I might have finished. Every once in a while my music quits, I'm not sure why. Now I've got this lovely, I need to get you guys out of the way now. I can't paint with you standing where I need to stand. Okay, so I've got this nice, dull, slightly cool green on my brushes, and I bet I can use this somewhere here and there. So this is me just trying to be efficient as a painter instead of, you know, crawling out from one spot, thereby requiring you to clean your brushes over and over. While you've got some color on your brushes, maybe you should look around and see where else you can use it. And I bet I can use it in a lot of places. Yes, ferns over here. This looks like a good color for ferns. Now, this is by far the most accurately that I have painted these ferns. I do know what ferns look like. Let's. Now hang in there with me for just a minute. I want to show you a very important trick. You should be getting the feeling right now that, like, oh no, he's working far too fastidiously. That's way too tight. That's way too, ooh, that's not going to fit in with the rest of the painting. If that's the way you're feeling, you are feeling the right thing. Congratulations. You are on target. I'm changing the color ever so slightly. Let's do just a few more, and then I want to show you a trick. So what do I do about that? Right? I would call it, I'm overdrawing. That's a good term. I might start using that. Overdrawing. And I'm inclined, that's a weakness of mine, is overdrawing. I only need to indicate really a few ferns that are defined, or defined to anywhere near this degree. I don't have to do too many. But hang on. In a minute, I want to give you the solution to overdrawing. And at the moment, this to me is the best way to solve this, is, in a sense, go ahead and draw. There are times when it just has to be done. All those are beautiful. It's looking like ferns now. I'll come back and do more of that later, but here's what I want you to see me do. Pick up a rag, stick a finger in my rag, and scribble. Did that work well or what? Now, can you see that? Your eye still sees the precision, if you will. You can those look like ferns still, but now they don't look overdrawn because I messed them up. Okay, that's the latest discovery for me as an artist, is having a distinct step where you actually come back and scribble, especially on top of any part of your painting that is overdrawn. New term, overdrawn. Isn't that sweet? Now, let me just go ahead and give you a caution. Actually, I can imagine some of my students trying to do this, and they pick up their rag. Where can I go? Is this a safe? Let's pretend that I did my drawing up here, okay? And they go, okay, and then he goes like this. Behold the tongue. What's the difference between what I did down here and what I did up here? Up here, that's called an ergonomic stroke. That is, I'm doing this kind of motion because the way my skeleton and muscles are constructed has nothing to do with thinking like an artist. So Let me show you the kinds, again, up here, just in a safe zone where I'm not going to mess anything up. Let me show you, again, the kinds of marks that I made. First of all, not this or this, but this, irregular. Do you see the difference? It's almost as if I'm making stars, you know, the 4th grade method of making stars, like that, or letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, but not this or this. No motion that you can make quickly and effortlessly that is not a good artistic stroke. Save that for washing the dishes, or washing your car, or brushing your dog, whatever, but do not use it when you're standing in front of a canvas. Okay, now since I started this, I'm going to do a little bit more. See, that right there does not look like a fern because I did it too quickly. I'm going to let it stay. But if I did that all over, I would not have the feeling of ferns over here, because I don't know how else to do ferns except to come in here and overdraw them. I hope I remember that term, because I think that's a great description of the way I and many of you paint. We tend to overdraw. Now I overdraw. I'm guilty as charged. I'm just coming up with a new terminology. Now I don't need to go all the way to the edge of the canvas. That would be a mistake. I could do a couple strokes like that. But I'm going to go ahead and, guilty as charged, I'm going to overdraw a number of these ferns. I'm almost done. I've almost got just enough, right? I don't have to draw every single fern. There. Now, I didn't overdraw those quite as badly, so I don't have to scribble them quite as much, but just a little bit. Now, I do think there's benefit in doing it fast, but it's very likely that I have accidentally developed skill in my hand of doing that particular kind of thing quickly, and some of you may not be able to accomplish it moving as fast as I'm. Now, I just realized I want over here, I want some sun hitting just a few leaves, a few ferns. So I thought I was done with the ferns, and then said, oh, wait. No, over here, I want some in the light. There we go. That's just about right. Those are slightly overdrawn. There we go. Yahoo, I'm probably done with the ferns. Isn't that great? Great trick. Now, what got me over there was because I had this neutral green color on my brushes. Forgive me. I know when I'm painting, I use such halting speech. It's crazy. I'm going to look up another thing. Climbing. What are those things called? Climbing hydrangea. There we go. Climbing hydrangea. Uh-oh, this phone's just about out of battery. So I'll need to... Welcome to the wild and wonderful real world of being an artist. In my opinion, at least this is how you do stuff. Come on, come on. There we go. Then we download image and get a couple more. Ooh, that one's even better. Hold download. All right, what I wanted to see, bear with me for just a second. Let me step over here and get a battery pack. And a power cord. My phone just turned off right when I plugged it in. That's crazy. Let's try back on. Later. All right, what I discovered some of what I needed to see, which was how many leaves are there on the climbing hydrangea? The answer is quite a few. By the way, one of my favorite greens is created by mixing phthalo blue and Indian yellow. The Indian yellow is a warm, tending toward orange. That means tending toward orange yellow. And so the green that you get, now you can get a very, just about the most intense green you can get is combining phthalo blue and cad yellow light or some other bright yellow. I don't use cads, but I use imitation cad yellow. I don't generally use imitations, with the exception of yellow. I don't know anybody that can tell the difference between an imitation cad yellow and the real thing. So I feel free using imitation cad yellow. Now, down here, let's stay in this corner for a minute. There's supposed to be lily of the valley. So do you say that if it's plural, is it lilies of the valley, or is it lily of the valleys? One of those funny little quirks in English language. My goodness, that battery is really all the way down to 0. That's crazy. Hey, Naveen, good. You're in India. Well, hope you have a good trip. We look forward to seeing you when you get back. This painting, Naveen is a very special buddy. He's Indian. He lives half the year in Raleigh and half the year back in India, where he comes from. This is 40 by 60. It's a pretty big painting. And as I stated yesterday, this is, of course, a garden painting. It's just chock full of greens. Every kind of green you can imagine, right? So it should be just a festival of greenery. And the key there is all different colors of green. I'm saying to myself, don't be afraid to push the boundaries of green a little bit. Push the boundaries a little bit. Come up with all different colors of green. It would be horrible to do a garden painting that had green is a very dangerous color. It's a mantra of mine. I'm going to put those brushes down because I'll be coming back to green, I'm sure. Pick up a couple small ones here, and let's do the lily of the valley flowers, blooms. You start out with a very neutral, dirty white. Okay, get that again. That's a good tip for some of you. That you don't, how do you paint a white object? So in this case, I'm painting white flowers. How do you paint white flowers? The number one answer to that is don't use white. Don't paint with white paint, number one. So there's my first layer of lily of the valley. Let me do one overdrawn, so that it looks, so the viewer can tell that those are lilies of the valley. Now, so that's layer number one. Let's come back now and do layer number two, which is same as layer number one, except a little bit lighter. So I just added titanium white. Again, what I'm doing right now is overdrawing. don't think I have much choice because I can't render something this small. You know, a few of them have to be accurate so that the viewer, my client in this case, can tell what they are. They don't all have to be accurate, but some of them do. And so you know what I'm going to do here in just a minute to rectify the little bits that are overdrawn. All right? I'm going to come in and intentionally mess it up. So here we go. Rag, finger in rag. How much? Till it looks good. That's how much. So it doesn't look overdrawn. There, mission accomplished. Now I'm going to come back and mix up just one more, even lighter, and come in and hit just a few bright spots. So now we've got a variety of intensity of those flowers. In fact, now I think I need a little bit more. And that's, again, that's overdrawn, so let me fix that. Of course, at the same time I'm doing this, I'm hitting the ferns again, right? You see that, right? And that's all right. If I need to come back and repaint a few ferns, that's all right. But I don't think I do. Let's change gears here. I don't want to get too focused in any one area of the painting. Move around, move around, move around. Since I've got a pale gray blue on my brushes already, I'm thinking let's go all the way up here to the sky. And that brush is, well, I'll start with that. I was going to say that brush is too small, but let's just use it since it's already dirty. Mixing up phthalo on dirty brushes, phthalo and titanium white. Oh, it would be so easy to overdo this right here. Partly because it's so much fun, if you will. That's a rule, general rule of painting. If something is a lot of fun to do, be careful not to do too much of it. You just really have to hold yourself back. It's like, oh, this is fun. Be careful. That's a caution, that's a warning to you. Now, I hope that all of painting is fun, so I hope you know how to take that. Let me give you the classic example. Spattering is fun. Like, spatter. Woo, that's fun. So you do it 4 times, and it's about 3 times too many, maybe 2 times too many, okay? So if anything's a lot of fun, be careful not to do too much of it. If I may, Bob Ross brush tricks. Okay, so now, if you're not one of my regulars, you don't know what I mean by that, so let me back up just for a second. How was it that Bob Ross and people like in that genre, how is it that they managed to do a believable, lovely, quote unquote, painting in 23 minutes? The two-word answer to that question is brush tricks. And that's what he does. He takes his palette knife and does the snow on the mountain. He takes his fan brush and does the pine tree and so on and so on and so on and so forth. That's how he did it. Now, let me tell you, if you're an artist, you should know how to do all those tricks. So go ahead, watch Bob Ross, take notes, man. Learn something from him. But you do not want to paint like Bob Ross, because what you end up with is a painting that looks like a Bob Ross painting, which is great for TV show, but not a great painting. Why? Because it's all tricksy. It's cheap. I love this show, don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing his show. But you do not want to paint that way. Trust me. Because it has a certain look about it. You can tell that it was done in 23.5 minutes. Or if you're doing it yourself, you can tell that it was done in an hour and a half because it's brush tricks. Now, everybody should know those tricks. And you could use them very sparingly. So back to my earlier statement, if something is a lot of fun to do, which includes all the brush tricks, like painting a pine tree with a fan brush. I won't take time to demonstrate it now. I've done that enough times in the past. I hope you know what I mean. You take a fan brush and you go boom, 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 and it makes a beautiful little cute pine tree. That's what I'm talking about. Good for TV show. Now what you can do as an artist, just with your fan brush, and if you're a real artist, you can hit the brush 2 times, maybe 3 times to make the beginning of a pine tree. But in there somewhere, you'll overdo it. So again, that goes under the broad heading of something. If something's too much fun to do, you're going to be tempted to do too much of it. That includes all brush tricks. They're fun to do, therefore don't do too much of it. How did I get on that subject? Oh, I was even doing these sky holes in this distant pine tree. Could fall into that category. I'm not doing brush tricks, but it is fun. It's almost like too much fun. So I need to ride the brakes and say, whoa, 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 Nelly, don't do too much of this. Okay, any comments I'm missing? Lori Johnson. Funny you should mention Bob Ross. We were just watching him paint pine trees last night. And I was trying to explain to my partner the difference between an artist and Bob Ross. Good for you, Lori. I'm with you. I'm with you, sister. That's exactly right. What's the difference? And again, I mean, I enjoyed Bob Ross's show. It was great TV. When I'm, just to stay on the subject, just to hopefully not beat it to death, but when I'm out painting on the street, of course. I mean, that is the name that gets named to me by passersby far more than any other. They'll come up and say, ooh, like, what's that guy's name with the fuzzy hair? And I say, Bob Ross. And they say, yeah, just like him. And if I'm being particularly snarky that day, I will say, yeah, in his dreams. Now, if I'm being nice that day, I'll just smile and nod. Uh-huh. People say, was Bob Ross a good painter? The answer is, who knows? Nobody knows. I suspect that he was a decent painter, but he just didn't do it on TV. Okay, okay, you understand, I'm being a real snob here, but for a reason. I'm trying to be a good teacher. No, you do not want to paint like Bob Ross. It was a genre, and it's fun, and it's entertaining, and it's even instructive, because you should watch Bob Ross to learn all the brush tricks. But then don't do it. Now, there is some guy, and thankfully I've forgotten his name right now, that has, on YouTube, has 1,000,000 times more viewers than I do. And he's a complete imitator of Bob Ross. And what that shows me is that myself, Dan Nelson, I am so far outside the bell curve of normal humanity. Because when I watch somebody being a complete fake imitator, it turns me off so much. But evidently, I'm the weird guy here, because evidently there are millions of people that aren't bothered by that at all. They like imitations. It's just so strange to me. But there you go. At least I know I'm the weird one, because this young man who's doing the Bob Ross, I mean, he talks like him. He does his voice just like him. He has his set up just like him, and he does paintings. Actually, his paintings are slightly better than Bob Ross's, so that's one good thing I'll say about him. But the fact that it's an absolute knockoff imitation just either makes me mad or laugh, one or the other. And I think it's better for me to laugh than get mad. People can do whatever they want, can't they? Anyway, it is. Thank you, Lori, for entering into my whatever it is, snobbery. There, yeah, I know. That's some of you are saying you're being a snob. Sometimes, in order to teach well, because I see if I want to influence, and I do, I want to influence some of you to be better artists, and you need to know and therefore do not paint like Bob Ross. Do not paint. Did I say that yet? Do not paint. Learn how to do all his tricks. Learn from him, but don't paint like him, because that's not good painting. If you think it is, you need to flush out your brain, if you will, with some, like Albert Bierstadt, okay? Go back to the Hudson River School of Landscape Painters, because that's, in a way, that's who Bob Ross is doing a cheap imitation of, and it is a cheap imitation. So if you think Bob Ross is a good kind of painting, you just need to have your horizons expand and say, oh no, Albert Bierstadt, that's good painting. Okay, yeah, which I do believe. A couple years ago, by the way, I painted at a fundraiser for boys' school, boys' high school. It was great fun. Very different audience, very different context. And I think you could probably Google this. So I did a live painting out in the lobby, had about 3 hours to do a painting. And I think I was quite clever that day, if you allow me to laugh at my own cleverness. The broadcast was called From Bob Ross to Albert Bierstadt in 3 hours. So what I did is I did a landscape, sort of a romantic looking landscape. And I started out very much like Bob Ross, full of brush tricks, doing all the stuff so that I could slap the image down very quickly. And then I spent the next 2 hours trying to distance myself from Bob Ross, a Bob Ross feeling to Albert Bierstadt. Of course, in 3 hours. You can't do Albert Bierstadt in 3 hours. So it was almost, what's the word? Tongue-in-cheek, yeah, tongue-in-cheek. But it was fun going from Albert Bierstadt, from Bob Ross to Albert Bierstadt in a fundraiser. And it sold for a decent price, if I remember correctly, and raised some good money for the boys' school, and raised some good money, decent money for me too, for an evening, you know. Okay, I think I'm done with the sky. Any other comments? All kinds of comments here. Yeah, Bob Ross did not use two hands, that's right. Troy, good to have you on board, man. Yeah, that's what happens. I agree, Troy, with your comment. That's right. Yeah, and believe me, I hope you don't get the wrong impression. I think like a lot of people, I have an authentic sense of affection for Bob Ross. Loved what he did, loved his show. Really, I enjoyed it just like anybody else. You know, I'm a real artist. Did I enjoy Bob Ross? Heck yeah, it was great fun. And being an artist, could I learn anything from him? Yeah, of course. I'm not an idiot. I can learn stuff from Bob Ross. It's like, oh, that's a clever way to make that mountain with a palette knife, right? Yeah, if you're an artist, you should learn all that stuff. Don't be a snob. But you don't want to paint like him. There you go. Okay. You just want to learn from. Same thing I feel like with Thomas Kincaid. I don't want to paint the stuff he painted, but doggone was he a good painter. Yes, he was. Don't you dare turn up your nose, or you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. That old expression. Don't turn up your nose at Thomas Kincaid unless you're better than him. And nobody in the sound of my voice is a better painter than Thomas Kincaid. Right, because G. Harvey's and a whole bunch of other people, Richard Schmid, they're not listening to my broadcast. Do you understand what I'm saying? Nobody watching my broadcast is going to be a better painter than Thomas Kincaid. Or if you are, you're not watching my broadcast. Do you follow me? So I say, no, do not turn up your nose. Learn something from everybody. I learned several good things from watching Bob Ross, etc., etc. Okay. So just about, oh, you know what? I've got a funny thing happening in my sky up here that some color that's not doing what I want it to do. So let's come in here and do some blue. That sounded like a... I'm painting the sky, so I'm doing something with blue. Duh. My 5-year-old granddaughter would get that answer right. But you see how this tree is orange and a little bit all those colors? Isn't that lovely? That stuff happens by accident, so to speak. Here's another problem right at the top of this tree. I've got a mark that does not make any sense, so let's correct that. All right. Okay, I think I'm done with the sky, at least for now. I may come back and revisit it later. Let me step back from my canvas and take a long look. Yeah, it's okay. As I said, I may revisit it later, but you don't have to carry any one part of the painting all the way through to finish before you move on. It's a good idea to move around on the canvas, which is what I'm going to do right now. So I already have blue on my brushes. I'm going to come down here and paint these hydrangeas. Now I'm hoping that this phone, I have to turn it on, so hang on, it's going to take a minute for that to turn on. But I can start painting some hydrangeas anyway. I have any? No, I don't. But in my sketch way up here, you can't see the sketch now. Here's another copy of it. These hydrangeas were Photoshop dropped into the sketch. I'm looking at color. It looks to me like it's right halfway between phthalo blue and ultramarine. In other words, cobalt blue. So those of you who use cobalt, go ahead, knock yourself out. Bad choice of words when you're talking about a ostensibly or possibly toxic pigment. Knock yourself out. But that gives me a quick opportunity to say, why don't I use? Well, I don't use it because it might be toxic. Who knows? But the other reason is because I don't need it. Because I feel strongly that I am able to achieve virtually a perfect imitation of cobalt blue simply by combining phthalo and ultramarine. And I have actually done this test in a class before, where I put out a dab of cobalt blue, brush it across a canvas, so you see it really well, and then mix up a combination of phthalo and ultramarine, and my students could not tell which was which. So good enough for me. Good enough for me. So there you go. If you want to get away from cobalt blue, and as far as I can tell, it looks to me like these hydrangeas are perfect cobalt blue in color. But I'm not using cobalt blue. I'm using a combination of phthalo and ultramarine. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And of course, the sun, very keenly aware of the sun coming from the left. Because these hydrangeas, as you all know, are big bulbous, are spheres, big balls of flower. So the light source is very significant in this case. I don't want to overdo it. But I'm going to do, having said that, I'm going to do one more. Yeah, nice. Okay, now put the blue brushes down and let me open this formerly dead phone. It's plugged into power now. Sorry about that. Let's see, did I, yes, good. I did download some hydrangeas earlier. And the main reason I wanted to see is what did the leaves look like? And ooh, look at, they're very intense chartreuse, blades coming between. They're chartreuse, of course, because the sun is hitting them. So just a few. Let's start with the dark green. Okay, here's a tip. When you're painting anything, you don't start with the light version, like I'm doing leaves here, right? You don't start with the bright ones with the sun hitting them. You start with the dark ones. Darks first, so here's the old adage, and this is not a Dan Nelsonism, this is universal, centuries-old art professor-ism. You start with the darks first, lights last. That's the expression. Darks first, lights last. Again, as you can recognize, that's related to the rule, my rule. We don't like seeing dark paint on top of light. We, yes, do like seeing light paint on top of dark. Do something a little bit unusual. Opening some sat green, since I've got so much green in this painting. And again, you do not need to put green paint out on your palette. Let me show you my palette just real quickly for a second here. You do not need to put green paint on your palette ever. Okay, there's what my palette looks like. It's glass. And you don't need to put green, because with a couple blues, and I've got 4 yellows. They're dirty now. Light, medium, Indian, and transparent oxide yellow over here. So I have 4 yellows and 2 blues. I can get any color, and plus everything else. I can get any color green I want. Why would I put out green, another green? The answer is shortcut. That's the only answer. That's the only reason, is because to save time. No, that's not the only reason, I should say, because each chemical color behaves a little bit differently than the one next to it. But the main reason I'm putting out right now is simply because I want the speed of mixing up some colors. So now I'm mixing up the spring green, it's called, I think, by some people. Chartreuse. Again, let's open up the reference. Not open up my phone. There we go. Okay. Yeah, do you see those blades? Let's do one really carefully, and then a number of others in a more loose manner. Okay, that gives me an idea. That gives me enough to go by. And it's only where the sun is hitting, right? So I'm not going to cover this bush with this chartreuse green, just a little bit here and there, just where the sun is hitting the flowers, then that means the sun would also be hitting some of the leaves. Don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. Okay, now I'm going to you do that familiar trick when you are in opaque painting, which if you're a traditional oil painter, you spend your whole life in Opakeville. So this applies to you the whole time, but for me, it only applies to the last layer, which is the only part of the painting process that I'm using opaque colors. So when you're in Opakeville, you put down one color and then you mix up a slightly lighter version of it and come back and hit on top of some of what you did just a minute ago. Okay? There, is that enough? Almost. It's a little bit too careful, a little bit too neat, a little overdrawn. So let me mess it up a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to do that same thing, a little bit overdrawn there. So let's mess it up a little bit. Much better. And then I've got a few streaks that come down into the dog, which I don't really like, so easy to fix. Do you see? You get some streaks you don't like, there we go. And then I'm going to come back one last time after having messed up and re-hit just a few of the highlights with the palest of blues on these blue hydrangeas. All right, I think that bush looks like a hydrangea bush and it's not overdrawn. Happy to say it's not overdrawn. I'm going to save these brushes with the bright chartreuse paint on them because I will certainly be coming back to those later. Where to go next? Let's get up here. By the way, why do I have so many brushes? And again, let me know my brushes. Why do I have so many? Do I need that many? No, absolutely not. Some of them are old, of course. That's why I have them, because they just haven't thrown them out. Or I don't throw out brushes so much. I put them in my old brush pile, which is back here and upstairs, and let the grandkids use them and so forth. And I use them a little bit. But why so many brushes? Because the essence of good painting, are you taking notes? The essence of good painting is making interesting marks. The number one salient issue of interestingness is variety. So you use different brushes so that you can make a variety of marks. And I'm discovering here my palette needs a little cleaning up. It's got too much green piled up everywhere, so, or spread out everywhere, I should say. So let me take a bunch of this green, put it all in one place. Now I have room again on my palette to mix other colors. Birdhouse, that's where I'm going. Birdhouses. Let's start with the yellow one. And again, I want to get some reference photographs here. My clients send me a number of pictures. They're really small, but I think I can see them well enough. All kinds of birdhouses. Very cute. Very, very cute. I hope that my client doesn't insist that my birdhouses look exactly like her birdhouses. For instance, this one is taller than most of hers. And here's where you enter the risk when you're doing a commission. I'm afraid she might say, well, we don't have any birdhouses that shape. It's too tall. It's very possible that she's a literalist. I'm hoping she won't say that. You should be asking me, well, if it's too tall, why are you making it too tall? And of course the answer is because I'm an artist and because I'm visually sensitive or visually astute. And I discern that the size of this birdhouse serves the painting very well. Does that make sense? Because it looks good. So that's the universal answer. Why'd you do that, Grandpa? The answer is because it looks cool, because I think it looks cool. So I hope that my client agrees with me. I'm not positive that she will. I just hope that she will. That's the kind of thing that when you're doing a commission, especially for people who are not used to hiring artists, they have in their own mind how they think things should look. They don't realize that the reason they're not an artist is because their ideas about how things should look are not good ideas. Woo, I hope she's not listening to this part. And of course she hasn't made that decision yet, but that's the kind of thing that non-artists do. If I may, many non-artists think that the difference between me and them is primarily in my hands. Now, we do have a lot of difference in our hands. My hands have skills that their hands don't have. But the reason I'm a good artist is more to do with what's between my ears than what's at the end of my, you know what? My wife is calling me, and she's the one person that is allowed to interrupt. All right, we're back. Thank you for putting up with me. My wife is the one person whose phone calls I will interrupt my broadcast for. She knows I'm broadcasting most of the time, so she tries to only call, which is very important. All right, so I've just painted some yellow, light yellow, dark yellow. I'll go ahead and point out a tiny little detail, just for those of you who haven't watched me too often before. Almost every time that you paint a flat plane, so I'm talking here especially about those of you who, like me, paint architecture, paint buildings. Almost any time that you paint a flat plane in a painting, and I've said this before, some of you still aren't getting it. I will not name names. When you paint a building, do not have sun hitting the entire building. So I even did that on, look at, on this one tiny little plane, the side of a birdhouse. But even there, I only put light on this side, and look how much more charming it is than if I'd had this bright Hansa yellow, lemon yellow covering the whole thing. It would be okay, but look at the little bit of charm that we would have missed. So some of you need to, heads up, pay attention to that. If you paint a building, do not bathe the whole thing, even if the photograph, in the photograph, it is bathed in sunlight. Don't paint it that way. You may ask me, how long did it take you to learn that trick? My answer is way too long. I should have learned it long before I did. But I did finally learn it, so yahoo for me. Painted way too many buildings poorly before I discovered that little trick. I've already spent a little bit of time. By the way, I've talked this morning, this afternoon, whatever, about taking a rag and messing up. You can do the same thing with the handle of your brush, and I did that after I drew this birdhouse, painted this birdhouse. It was overdrawn. That's my new favorite term. It was overdrawn. So I didn't take a rag, though. I just took the butt end of my brush handle and scratched through it in a rather random pattern. And I am indeed looking at photographs. Yeah, there's one birdhouse in particular here that I think they will recognize. It has a yellow body and a teal-colored or aqua-colored roof. So I do want to go ahead and imitate that one for them. It's very distinctive. Need to accentuate this corner just a little bit. So once again, I would like you to notice that I just mixed up the color that I want on the roof of this birdhouse. But look at how little of the roof I'm actually putting this color on. Right? I'm done. Forgive me, let me be blunt. A lesser painter would have mixed up this paint and then stuck out his tongue or her tongue and painted in the lines. Okay? Forgive me for being almost harsh, by saying a lesser painter. But you know it's true. You know it's true. And there was a day that I would have done that. So when I was a lesser painter, may we all become greater painters. I want us all to go up, folks. I want us all to go up. The greatest paintings in human history have not yet been painted. We're still questing our way together toward that elusive and glorious goal. Which reminds me, my music is not playing. we need some glorious music playing back here. Okay, not glorious, but jazz. How about that? I'm mixing up a neutral warm gray now with the front side. Why am I mixing up this color? Because that's the color that's already here on this birdhouse. And most of the time in my final edit stage, I'm responding to what's already on the canvas. I don't invent, so to speak, out of wholesale. I don't invent a whole new thing. I respond to what's already there. A little bit in contrast to what I was doing earlier, then the colors of this birdhouse are not, I've not derived so much from the photographs here as from an artistic decision. And again, I hope, shh, don't tell anybody. I hope, my client is a woman, her husband's paying for it, maybe, I don't know, maybe she's paying for it, doesn't matter. But I've been communicating, my hope is that she doesn't look at this and say, I don't have a birdhouse that's that color. It is exactly what you call artistic license. Why do I have a birdhouse those two colors? Ladies and gentlemen, why? Because it looks good, correct. Now, I'm feeling like these are all, again, a little bit overdrawn, but I'm gonna go ahead and finish and then do my overdraw solution, which is intentionally mess up with a rag on my finger, okay? But let me go ahead and, before I do that, let's nail down the details. So I am trying to reflect, in the painting, I'm trying to reflect the kind of charm and variety that they, in fact, my clients do have in the birdhouses in their garden. It looks to me like they have 20 or 30 birdhouses, and they tend to be rustic, they're very cute, I like them a lot. And I want to reflect that, but I don't want to copy that. And again, I hope. My guess is that when I deliver this painting on Monday, that I'll have to make a deal with them. My guess is, because I have a sense about my client. I'm probably going to say, if you would give me 50% down, keep the painting for several days, a week, and look at it, and then we'll get back together in a week, and you can give me a whole laundry list of changes. But I should probably say to them, I don't know, this will be very delicate. I'll say, no, please understand that some of the things that you might say, I might push back a little bit. I'm not just going to roll over and pretend that you are suddenly the art god, and I won't say that to them. But I'll try to figure out a way to say, you know, I'm a pretty good artist, and a lot of the decisions I made were good artistic decisions. And I want you to give them serious consideration before you have me change too many things, okay? Whew, that'll be delicate. That is the challenge of commission painting. And a couple times in my life, I have backed out of commissioned work, left money on the table because I could discern that the person that I was working for was a fuss budget and not visually sensitive. And so it was just not going to be a good solution. Okay, now time for rag on finger. Let me back out. I think you can see how big motions I'm making here. If I want to, of course, I can take the blunt end of my rag. Yeah, that is better. However, I am going to come in here and do a little bit. I'm going to paint the background. So I'm mixing up a pale green. This is a very common trick of mine. Again, you could call it don't paint the object whenever possible. Whenever you can connive a reason for doing this, do it. Instead of painting the object, paint the stuff around the object. So right now I'm trying to match the color of the background right here. See that? It's a little bit too bright. So just in a few places, here and there, I want to sharpen up the green edges. In order to give a little bit of definition to the birdhouses. And using this technique, instead of painting the object, I'm painting around the object. And again, let me repeat, I said this already this morning. As a painter, you should look for any excuse you can find to do this. Instead of painting the object, paint around the object. Now, and I hope you're paying attention. There's a line here. Do you notice I didn't go, do you follow me? No, that would be a disaster. No. Just little bits here and there, just little bits around the object. I'm going to continue. I'm mixing up a slightly darker and duller green now. Painting an object in this manner, you're much less likely to fall into the trap of overdrawing. Again, that is a new term. Probably other people have used it maybe for years. I just didn't realize that. It's a good way to describe overdrawing, drawing too much. Rather than paint the object, paint around the object. But not, and that's what you see me doing is how I'm painting around the object. Right? I'm not tracing it. It's just little bits here, little there. For instance, do you see this post that gets really fat down there? I'm just going to skinny up part of it. There. Little point of light right there. I like it, but it's a little bit too sharp. So, a little bit too much pencil showing over here. So I'm going to wipe out the pencil line. Part of it, and not the whole thing. Okay? I hope that you're discerning, if you're a painter, you're seeing what I'm doing here. When I say paint around it, I don't mean just overdo it. No, just a little here and a little there. Same, now I'm painting around the fence, right? And around the post that the birdhouse is sitting on top of. Ah, sweet. See, so I've defined the birdhouses a little. See how I left that area right there vague? Lost edge, classic trick used by everybody, called lost edge. Now this fourth birdhouse, I can't count very well. There are four birdhouses, aren't there? This fourth one is more abstract, right? In fact, this is the most realistic, and they go in order from realistic to abstract. Ask me if that's an accident. No, it's kind of a smart aleck way of talking, isn't it? Of course it's not an accident. You know that. Little tiny bit of definition at the top. Tiny bit of definition over here on the right. That's about as good as I can paint, ladies and gentlemen, at this stage in my journey. I'm sure I'll paint better in the future, but that's about as good as I can do right now. Now I've just mixed up a slightly paler green. To go on top of some of the green that I just did. Are you catching that? You do that over and over and over. With virtually every color you put down, you mix up a slightly lighter version of it and come back and touch a little bit on top of what you just did. I don't mean, of course, I don't mean obliterating or covering up what you just did. No, you just cover up a little bit of it here and there. All right, now that's about as that's about as good as I can paint, ladies and gentlemen. I hope my client, I hope she doesn't mess with that too much. I'm taking a break and thinking. Most detail. Oh, somebody made a comment about the dog's head being lost. It's actually not lost in the post. The post is over here. The dog's head is lost against the dark bush, and you're exactly right. I have to decide whether I want to make and I'm not finished with the dog at all. I have to decide whether I leave this behind the dog dark and then make the black lab light. That's ironic, you understand? Black lab is black, but with a reflection on the coat. Do I make him light, or do I put some green behind him so that then he's silhouetted in front of the green? And I haven't decided which way I want to go with that yet. So I'm not even going to do it right now because I haven't decided. Let's tackle something different. And I'm just about ready to stop this broadcast. It's going to get too long. I'm always worried about boring you guys to tears. That around the birdhouses, though, that was some good example of painting, and I hope the right people will get to watch it. By the way, and my technology is improving little by little. Got the microphone, got the camera back, got a monitor. Let me look at some comments here. I like you guys talking to each other. Oh my goodness, Troy Castle had to get up at 3 a.m. to watch me. Bless you. Hope it's worth it. I hope I'm putting you back to sleep, actually. And David said about the dog. That was you, David. Yeah, so I answered that. I don't know if I'm going to do green behind a dark head or light reflection on the dog against dark. Feel free to weigh in, David, if you have if you have a strong opinion on the subject. I feel like probably... Well, you know what? I've got green on my brushes right now. Let's try a little bit right now and just see. I think, yeah, I think probably that's the way to go. Keep it simple. Going the other way is a little bit artsy, fartsy, kind of tricky, if you know what I mean. But won't read as quickly as dog's head is if I do it this way. It's, you know, black lab in front of green bush. I don't know. I reserve the right to rub that off. It can be quite subtle, can it? This is not what I was going to do right now, but David, you brought it up a good subject, and yeah, not on a detour. I'm going to leave it at that for a minute. I want to move over to this corner. Oh, I'm sorry, I just painted outside of your... So, thank you, David. I appreciate the encouragement. So don't worry too much about boring you guys to tears. Okay. Now, I focused quite a bit in my underpainting on the daylilies, the flower part of it, but I didn't do much with regard to the leaves, the leaves and stems. So I've just pulled up a photograph of leaves and stems. Let's do a little bit of that. Starting out with a very dark green, of course. You don't start with the light stuff, you start with the dark stuff. Darks first, lights last. Again, that is not a Dan Nelsonism, that is a art professorism. Back in the day when art professors actually used to teach how to paint, of course. There are not that many that do these days. Most of them are teaching politics and philosophy. Which, to their credit, they're trying to teach their students how to thrive and survive in the art world that exists, as it does, because the art world right now is dominated by the, what I call the art establishment. And never mind, that's a huge lecture. Hang on a second, I need to change monitors in my ear. Hang on. Let's plug this one back in. So for you regulars, here's a little bit of improvement. I'm wearing a Bluetooth wireless monitor. That helps me a lot. Helps me know if I start getting bad sound, and if stop broadcasting and so on. In fact, forgive me for just a minute. I need to plug this phone in. We're all the way down to 6%. Now, let's see if we get noise. Hang on a second. How's that sound? It sounds good. Okay, good. I don't understand. Sometimes we get bad static when I plug electricity in, and sometimes I don't. So, yahoo! I'm not getting static right now. So that's good. I don't think I need to see that picture anymore. I understand the leaves of give the impression of daylily leaves. I don't want to paint, I'm going to paint a few of them very carefully. A few stems, slightly different shape. And again, if you will, this a new discovery for my mind is I now realize that when I'm doing things like that with two hands, I'm in fact, this is what I was not sufficiently aware of. I am in fact exercising skill in my hands that I almost wasn't aware of. I say to my students, do like this. And they look at me and they don't do anything like that. And I now realize, oh, wait a minute. That's a skill I've developed through years of practice. It didn't seem like a skill to me, but now I now realize it is. So I hope you understand. I'm not bragging, saying, "Oh, I have skill." No. What I'm saying is, I'm learning how to be a better teacher by realizing, oh, wait a minute. That's a learned skill, a trained skill that I've developed in telling people to do it. It's sort of like a golf coach standing up and driving a ball 300 yards, then turning to the student and say, just do that. Okay, so that's not good teaching. So I'm going to modify the way I describe that a little bit. Even the, of course, even the two-handed stuff is a skill that I do want you to imitate me. Okay, before I go any further with those bushes, let's mess that up quite a bit, quite vigorously. There, that's better. Let's still, if I can do a little bit more, just a few of the fronds, maybe if you call them that, a few of the leaves. Let's change color a little bit here. I want more blue in that green. Okay, not too much though. Be real easy to overdo this. Okay, now let's mess it up again. I'm trying to get this phone turned off. There we go. See, what surprises me is the degree to which it still retains the feel of leaves in this case, even though I just messed it up so violently. You could still see leaves in there. I want right in here though. I want to come in and see if I can lift a little. Yeah, there we go. Good. Lift some paint out. There we go. That's nice. All right, now let's put the leaves behind us. Let's move on to the flowers themselves. And here again, I do not want to overdo these flowers. It'd be so easy to say too much. So at the moment, I'm mixing up a fairly, let's bring the flowers back up so I can refresh my memory, see exactly what daylilies look like. There we go, yeah, very orange. So I have, at the moment, mixed up a fairly dark and dirty orange, fairly brownish. A little bit more red than that. There we go. Because of course you always start with the dark, not the light. So I'll do the dark orange first and then come back. And I'm putting out a tiny bit of liquid. In this stage of the painting process, I don't use a lot of liquid, just enough to help the paint flow. But okay, so let's do some daylilies. Am I on? No, I'm sorry. For some reason. There we are. Okay, I'm focused on the right thing, right? There we go. Yeah, and some of the leaves curl all the way under like that. Now these, by the way, down here, just very, very abstract. You know what? That needs to be redder and darker than it is. We remix those colors a little bit. I'm breaking the rule right there because I'm painting dark, slightly darker on top of what was lighter. But it was small enough that I can get away with it. And part of the trick is knowing when you can get away with breaking the rule. All rules can be broken. No question. You just have to know when and how. It's more like why. Why are you breaking the rule? Because many times there's a mitigating factor. There's some other principle that's at work. Or just, maybe you can't even explain it, but for some reason, in this case, in this or that case, the breaking the rule seems to be working better. And I'm always willing to listen to a student explain that, and then sometimes, and then myself, and then try to decide if I'm just blowing smoke or if it's actually a good time to break the rule. Okay, so much for rules. Let's just paint here for a minute. So I'm painting the dark layer of daylilies. I want to give the impression of daylilies without overdrawing them. You don't get credit. This is a hard thing for beginner artists to learn, I think. Now, wait, let me back up. No. The number one mistake that most beginner painters make is they're not good drawers, okay? So let's say now that that's not you anymore. Now you've learned how to draw and you can draw well. Okay, now for you, the hardest lesson to learn is you don't get any points from the viewing public, if I may use that terminology. You don't get any points for accurate drawing. You do get kicked out of the good boy club for bad drawing. Okay, so you get vetoed, you get eliminated, you get disqualified for doing bad drawing, but you don't win any wonder points for doing accurate drawing. Is that making sense? Whew. What you get credit for is doing an accurate drawing without overdrawing. That's, or another way to put it, you get credit for making abstract marks on your canvas that accidentally look like, quote unquote, the word accidentally is in quotation marks, so to speak, that accidentally look like whatever it is you're trying to draw, the thing that you're drawing. Does that make sense? Another way to put it is you don't get credit, again, in the world of what I call real painting. And I know that's, again, I'm being a snob when I use that terminology, but it's what David Leffel calls abstract realism. It's the world of most of the great painters through history, but not all. There were some great painters, like William Bouguereau, who was a tight realist. But I'm talking about the school, the descendants, if you will, of Rembrandt. John Singer Sargent, Frederick Remington. My goodness, he was a good painter. Phew, loose, loose, loose. So in the world of what I call snobbish, of real painting, you don't get credit for it. In this case, I don't get credit for accurately rendering lilies. And when I say credit, you know what I mean. I create an aesthetic buzz in the mind of the viewer. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about getting arrogant credit. Or, you know, oh, Dan Nelson, he's the greatest. Blah blah. Not that kind of credit. I mean, sincere, artistic accomplishment. I don't get credit here for accurately rendering daylilies. Hang on, are you with me? Now, if I render them inaccurately, then I get disqualified. I get no points at all. I get kicked out of the game. I get kicked out of the good boy club. I don't get any points at all for rendering them poorly. But continuing, trying to get this principle out, because I think this is the principle that divides the real painters from most of the wannabes, men from the boys, so to speak, even though many of the boys are girls. I don't get credit for accurately rendering lilies. What I get credit for is how, I'll put it radically, is how big of a mess I can make on this canvas and it still looks like lilies. That's one way to put it. I'm going to try to put it some other ways here in a minute. I don't get a credit. I don't get credit. Now, if I mess up on the lilies, I get disqualified. I get eliminated. I get kicked out. I don't get any points at all. But I don't get, let me take out the phrase get credit. Let me use a different. I don't create a significant aesthetic buzz in the brain, in the mind of my viewers for accurately rendering lilies. What I get credit for is putting just enough information on the canvas that the viewer's mind takes a split second, goes, what is that? Confusion. I don't know what that is. Okay, just for a second. And then says, oh, daylilies. Not only that, and then they go, dang, they look exactly like daylilies. And it's a little bit of a surprise. The fact that it looks exactly like whatever it might be, in this case, daylilies, comes almost as a surprise to the viewer. Because their first impression was, that's just a mess. Am I making sense to you? I'm trying to describe the deeper mysteries, if you will, the deeper mysteries of art and painting. I wish somebody had described this to me decades ago. I swear I would have been open to hearing it, but nobody, I had to find it out myself. So I'm trying to do to you what was not done to me, which I was not taught this. I've just had discovered it. Okay, I'm going to come back, wipe off this color, and come back and do a third lighter color. So you can see, right, that I started with this dark red-orange and actually made it a little bit too big of a jump, but lighter. And I'm going to do a lighter yellow-orange yet again. And again, I still have the photographs of these lilies here in front of me. I'll be looking at them especially carefully as I get down to. Now I've run out of yellow. Hang on just a second. Got yellow in here somewhere. I actually tried to, here, I'll let you join in my travails here. So here's my drawer full of oil paints. This is just, I have more upstairs, and I have more in the van, and I have more in the trailer. Oh, there's some yellow ochre. Let's put that out. That's for another time. But right now, I would like I want a yellow, cad yellow light imitation. And as I said, they're supposed to be organized. My organization is evidently suffering. There we go. There we go. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Bismuth yellow. Wow. And since you're watching my drawer, I'll let you watch my palette for just a minute. Every once in a while, I just feel like, okay, too much of a mess. Let's clean up this. I won't need purple for a while. I've already got lots of green. I don't need green, so let's clean that up for a while. Just so I have. There is no such thing as a perfect palette solution, by the way. Paper palettes are tearaway. Paper palettes are a great solution, but they don't solve everything. Traditional wooden palettes are an option, but you can't scrape them with a razor. Some of you might be saying, well, you're wasting so much paint. Well, no, I don't think so. And then some people say, oh, you should scrape all that off and put it in a new tube called Torient Gray. And I agree with the people that say that. But I already have so many tubes of Torient Gray in here, I don't need any more. Torient Gray, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is the color. That really is a name. I'm not making that up. T-O-R-I-T. Torient Gray is the color you get when you mix all the mess on your palette. And paint companies actually distribute Torient Gray sometimes because they just clean up their machines. You know, the last little droppings of every color, put it all together. Whatever color comes out, that's the color it is. And that's a good solution, except that after you got enough tubes of Torient Gray, you don't need any more. that's sort of where I'm at. Okay, now back to painting. I'm glad I remembered to move your camera. That's my biggest fault, to say. Move my camera and then forget that you're not looking at that anymore. Okay, so yellow number 3. And it's at this point, I probably could start doing some details. The center of these flowers is like a little starburst, and then there's one vein down the middle of each petal that is a bright yellow. Yeah. Now, for those of you who are saying, yeah, but I hear what you're saying, but you're not doing it. You might feel like I'm overpainting these lilies. Well, guess what? I feel like I'm overpainting them too. I am overpainting them. And some of you have been watching me for a while. You say, I know what he's going to do next. He's going to put a rag on his finger and mess it up. You guys are exactly correct. So I'm going to, that's one way, it's not the only way by any means, but it's one way to skin the cat, so to speak. Sorry about all you cat lovers. It's only an expression. And then, of course, there's the pistils and stamens, or whatever you call it. I used to know which was which. Let's go ahead and do those. Let me catch up on some of your comments here. That's been a while since I... Audrey says, I kept waiting for some real close-ups of the flowers and birdhouses. Ah, so maybe I'm not giving you enough close-ups. Is that right? Yes. Well, let me try to fix that a little bit. Thank you, Audrey, for that good comment. Here's the birdhouses, first of all. Okay, that's pretty close up, right? And then here are the flowers. They're not finished yet. Let me give you a closer look at the flowers, such as they are. Okay. And this is before I've messed them up. So I will be messing them up with a rag on my finger here in just a few minutes. Okay? This is my next to the last yellow. I'm going to come back and do brighter yellow even one more time after this one. I shouldn't say brighter, I should say whiter. Add more white to it in just a minute. So all these pistils and stamens in these flowers is a repeated motif. Again, that is, there's a whole bunch of them, right? That means you may be very sure that I'm not going to render them all in the same manner. That would be a mistake. All right, so I'm going to, using a palette knife for some of them, using my grandson practicing his piano, as you can see, as you can hear. I haven't even done the butterflies in here yet, so that'll come later. Okay, that's enough of that color. I'm going to mix up some white on these brushes and do one last hit, one last application of on these flowers before I do the mess up. Okay? And this is the brightest color. I don't need to do much of it because it's the brightest color. It's just little accents here and there. Now, let me stand back. Yeah, I think I'm close to. I just step back for just a second, and I think my lilies are pretty close to that sweet spot of accurate enough and abstract enough. It's a real tricky balancing act. Okay, now let's do the moment we've all been waiting for. Where I'm going to, and I need more than one finger. I can try 3 fingers in my rag. You can't do this slowly. It will look terrible. You cannot do this slowly. Trust me. All right. That looks pretty good. Wow. Now I feel like those look like daylilies. But for the most part, I don't think they're overpainted. Now, of course, I reserve the right to come back tomorrow or whenever it's the last time I do this and do tiny little touch-ups. Like, for instance, a couple stamens. I think these are stamens. I knew in 7th grade. They're either pistils or stamens. Anyway, all you botanists, leave me alone. I've got the ghosts of botanists laughing in my ear, laughing at me. All right. Now I have to do butterflies. I don't feel up to that at the moment. I do feel up to doing black-eyed Susans. So David, you think some of my flowers are too similar? You may be right. I mean, I tried to make these down here darker and these lighter, but you might be right. Probably what I'm going to do at this point then, David makes a good point, is I will do that in the glaze tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, whenever it is. No, tomorrow's Sunday. It'll have to be tomorrow. I'm going to do glaze over the whole thing, and I'll just push some of these back. That doesn't mean that. Well, doesn't mean I wouldn't have been better off probably doing what David has suggested, and that is making a wider variety. I thought I was doing it, but now I see that now they're kind of the same color, darker down here, but a little bit too much the same. I can make these up here brighter. Tell you what, let's do that. That'll, since I've already got this, since I just put some fresh pale yellow. Yeah, that's a little better. Thank you, sir. Right, now, oh, I'm sorry. I was barely on screen there, was I? Other comments, let's see. Yes, Lori, I am going to do butterflies there. 2 big ones there, and I'm going to do those later, so thanks for asking. Now, let's go back and do the black-eyed Susans. And I don't think I didn't look up black-eyed Susans on my phone, but I have very good images right here. I think I know pretty much what black-eyed Susans look like. I'm not being smart when I say that. I'm saying, no, I do have a clear. So again, mixing up a dark yellow. You start with the dark. Now, these are, of course, much farther away. Or is it much further? So I have to be careful not to overpaint these. Or overdraw these, is the term I've been using. Just a few hints of black-eyed Susans. And again, this is with my dark color at the moment. Now, that's enough of drawing individual petals. Now let's just do, and black-eyed Susans are a distinctly horizontal flower. They grow up and point straight at the sky, so they don't tilt toward us or away from us so much. A little bit, but mostly they try to point straight up. So most of these flowers will be ellipses. Okay, a little bit too dotty. There you go. That's better. Beware the dreaded dotification. Beware, young painter. The dreaded dotification. If you accidentally slip into dotification or over-dotification, then you have to break out your mighty anti-dotificationizer. Anti-dotifier. Which usually is a rag. I think some of what you're getting from me, of course, is all the lessons that I've learned the hard way. If I'm doing something right, but I'm not really aware of it because I've done it right for so many years, you're not going to get much of that. Most of what you're getting from me is reflecting my own journey. I admit that right up front. Now, I do tend to think that my mistakes in my journey most of the time is not that different from most other people's journey. Somewhat in the details, but not entirely. Like, I'll use, for instance, an analogy, and I know this from experience. Many times, the best singers, changing category completely, the best singers do not make the best teachers. Because many times the best singers don't really know how they do what they do because they just do it so well. And they've done it so well for so long naturally. So they have a hard time helping people who are not like them, who are not naturally great singers. And I do know one area of my art world that is like that. I am not great at teaching color mixing. And the reason is I recognize is because I have done it intuitively for so long that I sort of can't relate. I don't understand what people don't understand. Those don't look very much like black-eyed Susans. Now I'm going to put the black eyes in them, and that'll help quite a bit. I may add some yellow to that tomorrow in the glaze phase. But let me go ahead and do some black eyes right now. That'll make them look quite a bit more like black-eyed Susans. So you don't want, most of the time you don't want me teaching color. I can teach certain things about color, but not other things. And I'm just acknowledging my own weakness there. I'm not bragging, I'm just saying that's the way it is. I remember, again, when I was 12 years old, I remember discovering at a gut level, it's like, oh, give me 3 primary colors, yellow, red, and yellow, yellow, red, and blue, and I can match any color in the world. Okay, so I was 12 when I realized that. So I'm not unique, but I'm probably a little bit unusual. Anyway, but what you are getting from me is stuff that I've learned in the last, consciously as an adult. The lessons, the hard lessons I've learned. If I'm a good painter, it's largely because I've made more mistakes than all y'all. I'm being a southerner here for a minute, all of y'all. Okay, those look like black-eyed Susans, don't they? But all together now, in the last several minutes, I have been doing what? My favorite expression today, born today. I have been what? Overdrawing. Yes, that's correct. Right? Slightly overdrawn. I'm not talking about my bank account now. So I'm going to rectify that to some degree with a small area, so one finger should do it. Yep, there we go. Better. Voila, I like it. I'm excited about that fairly new discovery of mine of coming back. And that's one of the reasons I like oils so much better than acrylics. You can't do that with acrylics. With acrylics, it's dry in 2 minutes, and all you can do is come back and paint on top of it. Unless you use a retarder, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I know. Okay, any other comments I'm missing? Lovely lilies. Are those butterflies? Yes, butterflies, got that one on. David, do you have unbleached white? I do not. Unbleached white is perfect color to do when you do a finished glaze. Really? Perfect color to do when you do a finished glaze. Unbleached white. Well, thank you, man. I'm going to have to look. I don't even know what that is. I'm going to have to look that up. All right. Speaking of look up, I don't think I've downloaded yet any images of irises. Nope, I have not. So let's, again, all I'm modeling here for you is how does a real artist work in the days of Google. I-R-I-S-E, irises. Images. There we go. Yes, right there. Let's download that one. And then, of course, they give you several similar to that. Isn't Google, I mean, just come on, you guys. Do you remember the days when we couldn't do this? Speaking of which, and this is kind of a sad memory, as an illustrator. So I spent most of my adult life as an illustrator. Many of you know that. And I spent untold hours. Like when our kids were little and we're watching a movie, right? Any family night, I would sit there with a stack of magazines or catalogs in my hand during the entire movie and do nothing but, I've learned a trick here. Let me edit this, turn it upside down, save. Because then I can turn my phone upside down and it's still plugged, power's still plugged in. Come on, come on, come on, come on. There we go. The tricks you learn. Anyway, I would sit there during the entire time that we were having a family night and watching a movie, plus lots of other times, tearing out, and fairly carefully tearing out what ended up being, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 20,000 pages of images, pictures of things. And I had 2 file cabinets, 5 foot tall, legal size, 5-drawer file cabinets, crammed full with thousands and thousands and thousands of images. And I kept that out in the garage when we moved into this house, been here 11 years, kept it out in the garage for about 9.5 or 10 of those 11 years. Because I just could not bring myself, honestly, I just could not bring myself to throw them out. I thought about, donating them to a university, to art school, looked at all the different options, and finally, just had to bid them all a fondue, rolled up the dumpster, kept, went through them and kept some things that were special, but most of it, 10,000 and 10,500 pictures. So that's, ladies and gentlemen, what serious artists, illustrators used to do back in the bad old days when you weren't there. Now we just do Google. Whew. That was hard. Still makes me sad. But we needed the room in the garage. I had a friend, by the way, an illustrator, David. I'm forgetting his last name. He passed away about 20 years ago now. I actually preached at his funeral. He was an illustrator in New York City, and he helped found the Society of Illustrators in New York City back in the 40s or 50s. He was a personal friend of Norman Rockwell. David, his name will come back to me, and I have some of his prints. I inherited, his wife invited all his artist friends to come over and buy his stuff, so we did. It was a bittersweet, happy, sad moment. I got a bunch of stuff at a good price as we bid a fondue to our friend David. Anyway, and again, lifelong illustrator, top drawer illustrator of New York City, and nicest guy in the world, friendly, oh my goodness. Not at all like me, he was a nice guy. And he had 7 file cabinets filled with pictures. And he did, in fact, donate his to UNC Art Department. It's probably a mistake. He probably should have donated it to East Carolina University, but that's another matter. It's all water under the bridge now. Those are my irises. I did those in 2 colors. Now, I'm going to take a little detour. What time is it getting to be? Yeah, I don't have much longer to paint today. I'm painting this evening at Peggy Sharp's gallery in Wilson, North Carolina. A little inside joke for the locals there. They actually sell t-shirts, say I'm from Wilson with a T in it. I'm going to change gears here. I'm going to stay painting in this area, but I'm going to cheat my system, if you will. I'm going to break out of what I'm doing right now, which is light opaque highlights. And I'm going to go back to dark. So I just mixed up some very dark green, dull green, because I want to come in here and having now, let me go back to Black-Eyed Susans. Oh, I don't have any there, do I? My Black-Eyed Susans are all over here. So take a look at them again. Yeah, 80% stems, and then just a little bit of branches back and forth. So do you understand what I mean? But I'm cheating the system, because theoretically I should have done what I'm doing right now. I should have done it in the dark detail stage, but I didn't. You could say, well, you hardly would have known where to put the dark stuff, and that's exactly correct. So, but now that I'm this far, now one of the nice, fun things that this is allowing me to do right here is, again, paint the negative. Instead of painting stems and leaves of these Black-Eyed Susans, I'm painting around the stems and leaves. So I get visual points. Again, I don't mean points. What I mean is, by not painting the object, but by instead painting the stuff around the object, the viewer's mind will be momentarily, like for a split second, confused by what they're looking at. And their brain will have to rewire, go, blah, 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 oh, stems. And that little blah, 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 that's my sound effect for little bit of joy juice, little bit of aesthetic pleasure released in the brain of the viewer by that moment, by that split second of confusion. And the confusion is created by the reverse painting or negative painting. Now, by the way, we have a little bit of a terminology issue problem here, because many of us, we use the term negative painting for two separate and distinct different acts. One is when we're actually taking paint off the canvas, is sometimes called negative painting. Understandably so, because you're taking paint away. But then what I'm doing now is I'm putting paint on the canvas, but I'm not painting the object, I'm painting around the object. So that's called negative painting. So forgive me, we have a little confusion in our terminology, but we'll just worry about that when it comes up. So I think I'm done with that. Again, probably just a tiny bit overpainted. There we go. Then, of course, after making a mess, of course, you reserve the right, if you will, to come back and redo a little bit more. Same thing over here. And same thing down here again in the corner. Again, I don't want to do too much down here, but since I've already got this dark on my brushes, it'd be nice to come in here and do some negative painting. So not painting this flower, but defining the flower by painting what's not flower, by painting the darkness around it. Get it? I don't want to do that too much, because that's really, really creating a lot of contrast, a lot of energy. Do I want, and the answer is no, I don't want that much energy down there. So easy fix, easy fix. Get it? There, that's nice. So a balancing, a very delicate, very careful, very, very, very careful and intentional balance of visual energy. That's what, in a way, that's what all good painting is. It's a very, very careful balancing of energies. And what is energy? Well, probably number one, contrast. Number two, hard edges. Number three, intense color. Those three things. Hard edges, edges. So a soft edge is low energy. A hard edge is high energy. A dull color is low energy. A bright color is high energy. Extreme values, very, very light or very, very dark, are high energy. Midtones are low energy. And contrast, maybe, is where those two things come close together. That is high energy. There you go. So good, all good painting. Boy, you can write this down. All good painting is a very careful balancing of energies. You ever heard that anywhere else? Neither. We make stuff up around here, folks. As you get older, one of the nice things about getting older is you can become more self-aware. I don't mean self-conscious. I mean, that's a negative thing. But you become aware of who you are and how you fit in the cosmos, so to speak. What makes you different, what makes you the same. And that's a good thing. A friend of mine, reminded me of a word that I knew years ago but forgot it, called autodidact. If a person is an autodidact, that means they're a person who tends to teach themselves. And that does describe me. So if a person says to me, well, where'd you learn that? Who taught you that? It's a momentary blush of embarrassment ensues because I go, I made it up myself. Now, there are some bad things about being an autodidact, and that is you tend not to learn things that you should have learned from other people because you're too busy learning it yourself. Okay, let me go ahead and while I'm doing this, while I've got yellow, let's go to butterflies. Okay, so the downside of being an autodidact is you learn too many things the hard way because you could have learned it the easier way by paying attention to other people. That's the downside. The plus side is, however, is you tend to discover things that other people haven't discovered yet. Many great discoveries are made by autodidacts, people who teach themselves, discover themselves. That's the positive side. So a lot of my insights are in fact born of, hard knocks of trying it myself. And again, I'm not defending being an autodidact. I'm just saying that's just the way it is. I can't help it. That is the way I'm that way about everything. And to some degree, wish I hadn't been. I started playing, for instance, classical guitar when I was 22 years old. And looking back, I really wish I had taken some good and serious lessons. I could have been much better than I am if I had just bit the bullet and studied. But I didn't. So I'm a pretty good guitar player. Could have been much better. But we are all what we are, aren't we? And at least for me, being aware of what I am has helped me a little bit in the journey of life to figure out how I'm the same as other people, and in other ways, how I am different from other people. And I'm not sure that we can be much different than we are. Although once we become aware of ourselves, we can actually decide to modify our preferred behavior to some degree. But anyway, that's me. I'm an autodidact. Most of what I'm teaching you is stuff that I have made up myself. Now, don't let me give you the wrong impression. I'm an avid student. But I'm not a paying student, however. Here's one of the ironies of being a full-time professional artist. By the way, if you're putting the pieces together, in the course of my adult life, I've been a pastor, like a minister pastor of churches. I've been a musician, and I've been an artist. Think about it. I usually say 3 ways to starve. So one of the ironies of being a full-time professional artist is that I don't have a budget that allows me to go and take lessons, paint classes from all the big dogs. Like I have many friends who have a nice retirement. Nice retirement, first of all, period. They worked for IBM or Glaxo or some other big company for decades, and they were paid very well for working for the man. They put up with all the grief and pain of working for the man, unlike me. And so they can afford to go take these big, expensive lessons, which, because I'm an artist, I can't afford. I've taken some and would love to take more, but frankly, usually can't afford it. There's another problem, by the way, with me taking art classes. I think you could probably imagine this, even if you don't share. If I take a class, if I pay $500, $600, $700, $800 to take a 2 or 3 day class from a famous painter, and there's 15 or 20 other artists in the class, I hope I can say this without sounding like something. Most of the other artists in the room are not at the same level that I'm at. Oh, forgive me, that sounds really nasty. But you probably can imagine that that's true. And so very often it's not really worth my time to take a lesson, to take a class to pay a lot of money, because I won't get enough attention, because the teacher has to focus mostly on where most of his students at. I did take a class, a fairly expensive class, about 4 or 5 years ago, just to test this theory, and it proved true. Now, fortunately, the teacher, who will remain unnamed, he was a good teacher, but he did treat me differently, and I was relieved to see that. It showed discernment on his part, and he tried to give me some money's worth, even though, most of the other people in his class had been students of mine. That's sounding awfully arrogant. Forgive me. I'm trying not to, but I think you can probably understand that issue. Anyway, so I'm an autodidact, but that doesn't mean I'm not an avid student. That doesn't mean I spend hundreds of dollars a year, thousands, to go take big classes. I study online, I study books, and so on and so on and so forth. But all that is to answer the question, so Mr. Smarty Pants Nelson, who taught you all this stuff? The answer is, with a little bit of embarrassment, I made it up myself. Just some of you might have been wondering, where's this guy get all this information? He gets it from being an artist for his whole life. My dad was a good painter. I think most of you have heard this story. My dad was a good painter. It wasn't his profession, but he was very good. And of course, I didn't realize as a kid how good he was. It's only as an adult I went, oh, wow. I don't know that I've ever had a student other than my daughter who had as much talent as my dad had, because he was extremely gifted. Anyway, so by the time I went off to kindergarten, I thought I was God's gift to the art world. Does that make sense? To put it bluntly. Whew. Okay, maybe my butterflies are done. My butterflies are all... What's the word? Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't see me do all that, did you? My butterflies are all overdrawn, right? So let's undraw some of them a little bit. But generally, I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah. I'm sorry that I didn't have this. Good night, Naveen. It's 12:30. Bless you. Hey, Gary. Yeah, man. It was called a morgue. Isn't that funny? And Gary, do you have any idea why was it called the morgue? I was not aware of that topic, that name, until when I moved to Raleigh. I was in my mid-30s, 35 years old, mid-30s when I moved to Raleigh, and quickly developed a number of friendships with other artists, and they started calling this thing a morgue. I'd never heard it before. I didn't major in illustration. I majored in fine art, which is a bit of a mistake. But anyway, that'd be that as it may. Yeah, why do they call it a morgue? What a funny name. Yeah, but you're exactly correct. It was called a morgue. Other comments. Let me go back and see. Good night, Naveen. Said that already. David says, yep, in the 1975 slides. Yeah, picture and cutouts of magazines. Were you there, David? You were an illustrator back then. I don't think you're quite as old as I am, but... Hey, Toby, welcome, man. Toby, help me out here, my friend. Forgive me for forgetting. Are you are you the one that came up with the term sky dots? You're from New Zealand, right? And it was you and some other real regular back in the day, and I forget if it was you or one of the others that came up with the term, which I've used ever since, which is hilarious. And not only is it sky dots our problem, dotification, as some of you have heard me talk about. Dotification in general is a problem. And then there was another question somebody asked. Oh, what's the dog looking at? You know what? That is a very good question. And me and my clients and I actually went through several versions or variations of the dog. And I found this one online, actually. And I just feel like it's the best solution. If the dog's looking this way, then he's looking into the picture. If he's looking this way, I feel like he's looking out here somewhere. It's something we don't see, which is what I want. I feel like it works better if he's looking out of the picture and we can't see. And if he's just looking straight forward, like the Sphinx pose, it's too traditional, too common. So I really did like the angle, the pose that I found there of him looking off to his right. But that's a good, funny question. I have no idea what he's looking at. Hey, Izzy. I'm broadcasting a long time today, aren't I? Some of my...
What's your butterfly?
Do you? Oh, good.
And your dog.
Good, thank you. So right now I'm painting some of the road behind the negative painting. Again, reverse negative painting. Not painting the flowers, but painting what's around the flowers. I'm trying to mix up the color, a dull, light beige or yellow, the color of the road. A path, not a road. It's some.
Where was this picture?
It's actually the people I'm doing this painting for. This is their garden.
A lot of butterflies.
Yeah, they live south of Raleigh, down in Cary, I think, if I remember right. Maybe Apex, I don't remember. And even though all of these things are in their garden, they're not in their garden. Toby, thank you, man. Yeah, that was you. And for the 10th time, you're not from, it's the other guy, and I forget. Thank you, Toby. Yeah, forgive me. For some reason, there were two of you that were very, very frequent friends online during that same season. And one of you's from New Zealand and you from Finland. For the 10th time, he tells me I'm from Finland. Sorry, my friend. Yeah, and it was Toby, ladies and gentlemen, the famous Toby Newhouse, who designed, who coined the term sky dots. That is, when you're trying to do sky holes in your tree and you do a poor job, they become sky dots. Thanks, Toby. Good. Thanks for joining us from Finland. So what time is it? Let me see. It's 2 o'clock here. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening over there. Is that right? Maybe 8 o'clock? Good to have old friends come by. For the 10th time. I'm from Finland. Well, you know, Toby, I get Finland and, like a lot of people, I get Finland and New Zealand mixed up.
There's a comment.
Talk about two countries that could not be more dissimilar. Anyway, thanks, man. Okay, new comments. Who says what? David. Oh, you know what, David? Of course, I'm assuming David asked if I use a mirror to see in a different way. I certainly should. I do that extensively when I'm painting portraits, I'm assuming you've heard me rant and rave about the importance of using a mirror when you're doing portraits. No, I do not usually use it for landscapes, but doggone, you've caught me, as the expression goes, with my pants down. Because that's a great idea. Of course I should use a mirror. Okay, now I just plastered a whole bunch of fairly thick paint right there, and I'm going to do that, adding even more glow than what was already there. There's already plenty. I just added more. I'm going to mix up a slightly lighter version of what I just spread out and come back and hit just a little bit around top of where I wiped it away. Okay, are y'all convinced that that's the sun hitting that path as it goes around the corner there? I think you are. Yes.
I think you should make the dog more like...
Oh yeah, no, the dog is not finished yet at all. My grandson's here in the room with me, giving me his expertise. And you're right, no, the dog is not finished. So I've been focusing on this part of the painting quite a bit. And I'm violating my own practice. There's a lot of painting to be done, of course, on a canvas this size, and especially for this particular client, because the client is quite particular about a lot of things. Understandable, and they're paying the bill, so they have the right to be particular. So, like for instance, I think if I were just painting a garden scene, I probably wouldn't normally make sure that the plants are as identifiable as I have made these. But I feel like in this case it's probably warranted. Something happening right up here that I'm liking quite a bit. It's almost a lost edge. The top of these flowers, and the sun hitting the path. That just developed right there. I just saw it. It's been happening for a while, and I didn't really pay attention. But when I saw it, I said, "Ooh, that's nice." So now I'm actually accentuating that characteristic. Again, many artists know the term lost edge. Good trick. And part of the reason it's good is a lost edge also creates that momentary, that split second perhaps of confusion in the mind of the viewer, because the viewer can't quite tell what's going on for just a split second, then goes, "Oh, I see, that line continues around there," and then it turns into whatever the subject may be. So, but for the same reason, that's why lost edge is such a good trick. Creates a momentary confusion, which creates aesthetic pleasure. David says, "Get him here. I need to get him. Go get it. You think I need to look at this composition?" You're probably right. I wonder where my nearest hand mirror is. I used to keep one in this drawer for when I'm working on portraits, but I don't see one right now. I'll step into the other room and to the bathroom and get one in here in a minute. Dave's saying, "No, do it now. You're messing up." It's very possible. Very possible I'm messing up, David. Hang on. Yes, I've been broadcasting all day, pretty much. I'm having a feeling here that tomorrow or Sunday when I come back and look at this painting, this is too bright. All of this, I don't want to lose any of this detail, but I'd like to push it back slightly so that this comes forward. A little bit too much energy, but I think I can accomplish that with glazes. Again, glaze is transparent like glass, right? So I just do a warm brownish, whatever color on that and push that back a little bit. I think that'll make it work better. And I love these daisies, but they're popping out a little bit too much. So again, push that back. Because right now the composition is getting a little higgledy-piggledy. It's like too many things popping out at us. So if I push this back and this back too, this will come out, which is what I want. I want it quite clear where the center of focus, where the center of energy should be coming from. And it's up here. Swing and birdhouses, right in there.
Are they butterfly houses or bird houses?
Yeah, birdhouses. But there are definitely butterflies in the painting. They were.
How did you get a picture with all of those butterflies?
I went online. I actually found quite a few pictures of butterflies.
Those are the butterflies.
I don't know how many they want. I hope this number is okay. Quite a few, because I think it gives you a nice feeling, don't you think? If you see butterflies in a garden, do they give you a nice feeling? David giving me good counsel. He said, you complain all the time that you go too far. Well, stop. You know what, David? He makes a very good point. I liked this painting so well this morning that I would have stopped long ago. This is the hazard of doing a commission. Let me get really real here for a second. The danger, the hazard of doing a commission is that you cease using your own eyes and you try to see the painting through the eyes of your client. And I will claim completely guilty as charged today. Because I have a strong sense, I may be wrong, there's the danger. I have a strong sense that I know my client. And I'm much more worried, so to speak, try not to worry, much more worried that they're going to say, oh, that's all I have to say is that tone of voice, right? And they're going to complain about some lack of realism. I'm not sure that's true, but I suspect that it is. And I don't know if they're going to listen to this, watch this video or not. They may, so. So Lily, I don't know if I'm right. I'm just trying to be do what you want, and I'm trying to predict what you want. And of course, that's where we get into, as artists, we get into trouble. Because I'm trying to predict what my client wants. But when you're doing a commission, you really don't have any choice about that, do you? So David, you're exactly correct. In fact, I would say the way this painting was in the acrylic stage is as close as I've come since I can remember to finishing a painting in acrylics instead of going to oils. I think it would have satisfied the art side of me and probably the art side of you artists, but I don't think it would have satisfied my client. Of course, I might be wrong about that. So, but you, David, your observation is dead on. I do complain all the time about going too far, and I'm still on that journey of trying to figure out precisely how to stop earlier. To say it is one thing. I think this is not the painting to do that on. And I hope that I'm right about that. So my goal here is to not just look through the imaginary eyes of my client, but in fact to use my good judgment as an artist. Easier said than done. And do a good painting. I've mentioned earlier about, in a sense, quitting or firing, if you will, some clients, leaving money on the table. And I had actually one time went to some length to describe this process. I'll describe it for you guys too. If you get a client that gets too deep into the details, gets in the woods, so to speak, that's an expression here in America, about getting too much into too much detail, that's often an indication of it's time to quit working for this person. Because the more and more they come back and say, no, well, I wanted it more blank. You hear that tone of voice? The more often they come back and say, well, could you do, and then you do it, and then you say, well, I was thinking, and then you do it, and they say, well, I was hoping that, and then you do it, and they come back and say, well, I would like it to be more like, and then they send you a picture, another picture, right? Oh my goodness. See, what happens at that point, the artist often has him or herself tied into knots, and no longer are you looking through your own eyes. So I don't think I'm at this point with this client. It was close, but I think I am. But David brings up a very good point. I just don't think I can do it on this painting. And is that rationalization? It might be. It might be. But I don't think, I think, as I said, we've been working on this for 2 years. Oh my goodness. There, does that work? That works fairly well. Let me just. I say whenever I teach this, you cannot do that slowly. It will look horrible if you try to do it slow. You have to do it with speed and energy and strength. Why? Because every move we make as an artist leaves a history, and to an astounding degree, the viewer of the art can read the history. Oops, you know what? Time for me to pack up and go. All right, end of broadcast. I'll see you guys. I hope to broadcast tonight from Wilson, North Carolina. And it's been a pleasure. Let me, what comments am I missing? I'll just come back and see. Thank you, David. I appreciate the vote of confidence. I think you're right. This would be a nice print. Garden, right? Kind of a universal appeal. Nice garden scene. Thank you very much. All right, you guys, thank you much for your company and helping me.